Do good work is not a label, but a way of living. It is the constant and diligent effort to achieve a new level of excellence in one's own life. It is the hidden inner beauty behind the struggle to achieve excellence. It's not perfect, but imperfect. It is the effort, discipline, and focus that often goes unnoticed. The goal of Do Good Work is to highlight that drive. The guests I have on this show emulate this drive in their own special way. You'll be able to apply new ideas into your own life by learning from them. We will also have one-on-one episodes with me where we'll dive into my own experience with entrepreneurship and leadership. Every episode is designed to provide you with ideas that you can apply and grow in excellence in all areas of your life, business, and career.
Well, today on the podcast, we have Ash Martis. He is the founder of StartupFuel. He's a serial entrepreneur, networker, and connecting startup ecosystems together. And he's on the mission to help being startups succeed. Ash, thanks so much for being on, man.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a beautiful day outside, and we're in the middle of quarantine season. So it's awesome that we get to do these podcasts, and I'd love to share with you what I'm up to and also be able to talk with your community.
Dude, I love the optimism and I love the focus. There's a few things that you brought to the table when we first discussed. You talked a lot about data, connections, and creating ecosystems. So those three things: data, connections, ecosystems. How do they intertwine, and how did you intertwine them to create a new platform?
Oh, I mean, it's like the pivotal areas of like our modern century of like the internet. If you look at any platform we use on a regular basis for like social, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, that's literally what they do. They combine connections and networks, right? Mm-hmm. And they bring in a component of data to help make interactions a lot more seamless, a lot more exciting, right? Mm-hmm. So that it's in similar ways, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just taking some concepts that have been, age-old concepts since the early dawn of the internet, and just applying it in ways that nobody's ever applied before, right? To an innovation realm, which, in my opinion, is one of the most fastest changing industries on the planet. Right? There's always new things coming out. One year we had blockchain pop off. Next year we had AI came off, IoT, VR. The list goes on. And the beautiful part is we don't even know what's next. We have no idea. And as I travel all over the world, I get to go to these pockets of small events, big ones, meet companies, hear some technologies from military to consumers, that some things I look at and I go, wow, this could have some real commercial value. And other ones that I'm just like, why? What are people doing? Maybe either those things will become big, or they will be a stepping stone for somebody else to take that to become big, right? So in my perspective, I took the innovation ecosystem, startup companies, everything around venture capital, and decided that, what is out there? The AngelList, the Crunchbase, PitchBook, F6S, all these other platforms, and realized there is a huge gap. There's a lot of concentration happening in certain areas like Silicon Valley, New York, London, Berlin. There are places, Tel Aviv, that are known for this. However, entrepreneurship is global. It's every place. There could be a village in the middle of Africa where a smart entrepreneur who has a laptop, who has something, is building something, but don't have access to be able to disrupt the world. And if we keep allowing ourselves as an ecosystem, as a community, as a world, just to concentrate resources of innovation in those areas, we're only going to get similar products from similar minds. And we're not going to have things that are going to solve everybody's needs. Now, once you open up and give access to resources to people in diverse areas, women founders, LGBTQ in small little villages and areas, allow them to enjoy the same access to resources other people do, you are opening up a whole new wave of innovation that nobody's ever thought of. That's not only meant for one region. That could be meant for a global encompassing society, right? And
how do you?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but how do you define innovation?
So innovation, it's a very good question. And I'll tell you, I don't have the best answer for this. I think of innovation as anything that helps make life easier, right? So there's this famous quote that, the most innovative things were created by lazy men trying to accomplish things a lot easier and smarter, right? And that's what it comes down to. If I am, want to go to make something in the kitchen as food, and there's a spice or something or a tray that automatically puts in a combination of the right combination for a certain meal. That's
Mhm.
innovation, right? So whatever, using technology, hardware, software, know-how that can save time from everyday tasks, that is what innovation I define as.
Yeah, it's like design, like human-centered design, focusing on solving a specific problem and making it more functional for an actual purpose and an outcome. So I love
Yeah,
that.
yes, just saving time. The one thing in our life that's constant, or one thing that's thing, is time. We know that we have there's a definite finite number of moments we have on this planet, right? And we
Mhm.
spend every single day splitting our time into three segments: 8 hours of sleep. Well, hopefully most people get good sleep. 8 hours of potential work and like career productivity, and 8 hours of downtime, right?
Mhm.
If those two things, those two areas, the only ones we can really control, because we can't sleep less. But the areas that we can control, if there's a way to spend less time on that by doing innovative things, we then get more time to do other things, right? And it's
Mhm.
an important commodity. So what Facebook, what Tesla, what all these people are giving us is time. They're giving us back time to do other things as well.
To do it, to invest in the other areas. So then you focused a lot on the connection pieces, and I love that, being able to connect from a global ecosystem, the resources, connections, funders, investors. And I want to dive more into what you're doing with Startup Fuel. But I also want to look, how did you look at the data piece, the data component, and plug that in to the connections?
So the reason why data here is super important is because of the fact that as the world has expanded and we got on the internet, all these connections have become noisy. It's become all over the place. There's millions and billions of people around the planet that all have different backgrounds or different purposes. If you can start categorizing what people do into data segments, right? Like stages of company, industries, even like types of people, what they're doing. What you can do is you can facilitate better interaction and cut down noise from people
Mhm.
not having to interact with people that they shouldn't be, right? So, and I came across this by going to a lot of networking events, right? I am a serial networker. That's the number one thing I do, and I'm going to show you something right here. I've got business cards from around the world, and this is a bag of at least
Oh my gosh.
many of them. And so my oh wow,
So, so
it's
for our
all like,
listeners, you know how we have trick or treat bags with full of candy? Well, we have
yeah,
a bag here full of
a business
full of
card, yeah.
business cards. Oh my gosh.
And like I'll wait till the light kind of comes back here. But yeah, and that's it. Like I've connected with so many people around the world. What I've come to really understand and realize is that you can spend a lot of time meeting the wrong person.
Yep.
Right? You can spend a lot of time talking and meeting with the wrong people. And yes, sometimes it'll give you some great insights into what you didn't know. But in majority of the time, it can also waste your time, right?
Yeah.
So being able to,
Respectfully, right? It's like you're not respecting the other person's time, but it also, like, you're wasting your time for what you need specifically in that moment.
exactly. That's, what, like you nailed it right there, specifically in that moment. Because you may
Mhm.
meet people that you may need at different times in your life. But at a certain time, right now, you want what's critical to help you get to your next goal.
Mhm.
And that's not easy to find. And that's when data comes into play. The ability to sort out what people are doing and connect you based on what your current pain point and stress points is why data is so important in the world of connections and online communities.
That's pretty important there. And no, looking for our listeners as well. So as our listeners look into their companies or in the work that they're in, I think looking at what are the connection points that you can make right now in your job or in your career or even in your company. What are the connection points that you're either not leveraging enough of or that you're just overlooking, as well as what are the data points that can help facilitate better interactions or even yet a better respect of everyone's time. So those two key components there can create what we're looking at, leverage here, leverage time, and also making sure that we have the right connections or making the right connections for people. Well, let's move
100%.
on into hitting a little bit more around what Startup Fuel is doing, because you're doing some amazing work. I want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, Startup Fuel, like, I'll give you a great analogy that will, kind of put some basis around what Startup Fuel is, and then you can ask more questions and we can go deeper into it. So, Startup Fuel is helping startup companies become successful, like
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and resources. And how we do that is we think of a startup company like a rocket ship, and this rocket ship is trying to get into space. Okay, it starts on the ground, and it starts off as a couple of people who are quasi-pilots, quasi-engineers, trying to build a spaceship that will
Yeah.
withstand Earth's gravity, withstands the storms and the climate conditions, and get to space. And what space means to me and to us is when a company is self-sustaining. They don't need funding, they don't need external things, because they've found that they've hit the mark, the nail on the head where they need to go, and now they're growing. And it's usually the Series B, Series C, IPO startup companies that we see and we're using on a daily basis. But to get to that point is not easy. There's a lot of people going towards that. And to think about a spaceship, or think about even like a rocket ship, you need two main things to keep improving. One, you need fuel, a consistent source to keep fighting through that, Earth's gravity. And second thing, you need to keep improving. You keep figuring out why you can't pass barriers and improve to get past those barriers. So what I've done is, because I've traveled to about 30 tech ecosystems around the world, I've met a lot of sources of fuel: investors, accelerators, incubators, government agencies, corporate innovation, family offices. A lot of these people that have fuel, that they want to find good companies, but are also having a hard time finding relevant things to their thesis. Back to data there, right? So what we have done is we've mapped out all the sources of fuel that exist around the world, give it some tags, some data points that help you cut down noise, and then using algorithms, we're helping the startup company map its path to success.
Wow. Really?
And along the way, if there are things that they're not passing with barriers, we then open up a network of service providers, law firms, accounting agencies, consultants that can come in and help upgrade their spaceship, give them advice and things that maybe they don't have expertise in, to get past certain climates. Right? We're sitting in the middle of one right now. COVID is a worldwide storm that is there. Right now, it's clouding the entire Earth. And in this rocket ship analogy, everybody doesn't see the best path to get to space. Having this like personal assistant or this computer kind of give you the direction and saying, okay, these are the programs, these are the connections you need to make to get there, is invaluable. Right? And that's the thing that was what StartupFuel is building, a new type of LinkedIn platform that takes pitch decks, business plans, turn them into online profiles, and uses data coming out of programs like accelerators, incubators, VC funds, corporate innovation, to help match and map you to where you should go next.
That is incredibly powerful, because having a blueprint, or at least a most traveled path, will help a lot of startups, because every company is unique in its own way. So I remember when I was in an accelerator, like around 10 years ago at this time, right? 10 or 9 years ago, it was that no one knows the answer to your specific question as a startup, because no one's actually done what you're doing right now. But there's also the flip side, is that businesses are 90% similar. However, there must be another path, as someone who've discovered a new way, or a way of going about things that can help you, and being able to connect them with data and algorithms, I think, is extremely powerful. And I like the analogy of fuel. Like, I was reading this morning from Tesla's, space launch, right, for SpaceX, 83% of the ship has fuel, so that it can go. 83%. So that's how much it takes to actually get out of the the atmosphere and into space, which is incredible, right? With having that navigation. So when you're able to kind of connect all these data points from different accelerators, incubators, and ecosystems, tech ecosystems, as you mentioned, what is the trajectory, or what is the common path that you're seeing startups need to go through in order to, what we're talking about here in analogy terms, reach the outer rim, reach outer space?
So a lot of it surrounds validation, right? Market validation. And market validation comes in many different forms. It can come in early stage in research. And then as you grow, it can also come in forms of like the connections that the programs can make for you, right? So open the doors, it can open up, and the doors saying, yeah, we love this. Like we would like that. So there's an entire like ecosystem that plays. It takes like a village to raise a startup. And it's something that I really believe in. It's not just even one VC fund, one group can't do it. You need a whole ecosystem around it. But that ecosystem does not have to be physically or geographically in one place. And that's what I'm trying to displace now, the notion that, Silicon Valley is the only place to grow good startups, right? Or historically, yes. But Silicon Valley as a whole leverages infrastructures, data to help other industries, disrupt and thrive. But
Mhm.
it in itself doesn't give ways to other, like to their own ecosystem to grow, which is very ironic if you think about it,
Yeah.
right? To have to physically be in one location there to have access to all the resources versus being able to connect globally in that same unfiltered, unbiased manner is something that we should have had years ago, right? And so that's something that I'm really like. That's why I've traveled so much to understand it's not the same everywhere. The way that startups are viewed, the way that innovation is viewed is very different in different countries, different cities.
Mhm.
So the path of traveling was the idea of what's the X and Y. The X is the common denominator around the world, but what is the Y, the regional differences in each location? In Singapore, in Malaysia, in Tel Aviv, in maybe even in like Berlin. How is startups and tech different from North America and Silicon Valley? Let's start off building a platform that covers the common denominator. And as we
Mhm.
keep growing, we'll expand and open up offices in different regions to help local ecosystems take advantage of their competitive advantages.
Interesting. So you're taking best of both worlds. One, the disruption of not being in the same physical room as everyone else to get the resources, but second, it's also leveraging the cultural components from specific locations.
Exactly, you have to like Silicon Valley is great and it's good because there's a lot of innovation, a lot of focus from corporate companies from these programs. When you come to an area like Canada, for example, Canada has a lot of government support, right? A lot of
Mhm.
like funds that come from government top down in R&D, right? Which is, I would argue, more percentages allocated from government than private here, well, than the U.S. When you go into
Mhm.
other areas, like for example Tel Aviv, military has really spawned a lot of its innovations. The
Mhm.
Israel is a lot very heavily about its military presence, and they want technology that's revolutionary and game changing. So their
Mhm.
military sponsors a lot of it. And like that, if you go to every ecosystem, there is some cultural differences that fund innovation, right?
Mhm.
And being able to first bring everybody first into a level playing field, then start talking about the cultural differences and mapping those out is not easy, but it's something that it will help us as a humanity disrupt and innovate better.
And I love that because you're one of the biggest arguments about being remote or doing like what we're mentioning here, location independent work, right? Where it doesn't matter where you're specifically located at, even when it comes to teams in specific locations or remote work itself, we're missing the human component. And I love that you're tying back the human component of having leverage within communities as well as having a physical presence there, because at the end of the day, humans still need to do business with other humans, and in person will triumph always over a camera like this, although we can still make connections and make progress. But I like that you're marrying both, which I think is an important component for future disruption and innovation.
I completely agree. I mean, we are social beings by nature. You
Yeah.
cannot take that away from us. That's why like a lot of mental health problems are starting to pop up right now because everyone's in quarantine and you're not
Mhm.
being able to go out and see your friends as much or your family members. And we know that like it's great, and we're so blessed to be in this era where we can
Mhm.
do things like this, right?
Correct.
We couldn't do before, right? So we're so blessed. However, that being said, there's still something missing. I'd love to be able to do this in person, Raul. I'd love to be beside you in the same room and talking to you face to face while having us, on camera. I wish that was possible, but you know what? Since it's not, maybe our ability to be able to leverage these, but still be able to harness the communities that are there on the ground and invoke
Mhm.
them is the way to marry both worlds together.
No, I love that, and I love that a lot. For right now, for Startup Fuel, so right now you're experiencing some growth because of the whole situation, the global situation. How are you accommodating users, and how are you looking at it from an administrative standpoint? How to make sure that every single user experiences quality into the peak that it can be for what you're envisioning?
Yeah, it's tough, and this is an ongoing battle with our team every single day. It's
Mhm.
we want to make sure that a percentage of companies, like we know this 90% failure rate looms over the industry, and we're trying to reduce that failure rate. So like
Mhm.
making sure that companies are staying on the platform, engaging, making seeing how long they're around for are some
Mhm.
of the indications for how how well our ecosystem is growing. So, and I don't like to always put out a specific number, but if we can bring that 90% failure rate down to like 50, 40%, right? And show that not every company needs to be a unicorn to be successful, right? But there's many ways to be powerful, to be disruptive in like smaller batches. If we can show survivability and growth, I think that is the most important thing within each of these things. So it's survivability. People come in and out of a company, they start, they fail, they pivot, and that's fine. But the more companies that don't fail, that don't pivot, because they're accessing resources and fuel from StartupFuel, is what we want to keep feeding and fueling into.
So that's pretty much like your impact and also your value prop KPI, making sure that we can reduce the failure rate for the other KPIs that you're keeping track of, obviously new user acquisition. So you're also focusing on engagement rate for users to stay on. Do you have a specific goal in regards to engagements?
I mean, like, we're trying to move the conversation off LinkedIn, anything that's innovation startup related. Like, I get in my news feed, I see, like, here's latest reports of, the VC community in Tanzania. Here's the, latest reports of this in Berlin. And while it's great, and I love hearing about that because I'm an ecosystem leader, majority of people are trying to build up their content strategy. They're trying to become leaders, and they're using a platform that is not meant for that. They're using a platform that was meant for career development and professional development more than their business's development, right? And I don't know about you, but I get bombarded with like agencies reaching out to me for like, hey, I can help you do marketing, I can help you do sales, I can help you do this. And I'm like, even if I wanted that, this is not the place I wanted. Like, this is not the area that I'm not going to take you seriously. It's going to be a pitch. It's going to be a sales pitch, like a door-to-door salesman coming around asking me if I want water heaters or to change my air ducts. I may need that, but my first instinct is going to say no, right?
Yeah.
To convince me. But if we built a platform where founders could put up, we are facing this problem, and we want marketing agencies to come and solicit us and tell us how they can solve it and give us their quotes and prices for that, and us have a conversation online about that and then hire them through there, then we change the game a little bit. Then it becomes less about an intrusive, unsolicited response or ask to a, we want this. Right? We're at this stage of our company, and at this moment, we need this pieces. So if people can come and chat with us and tell us how they can do that and sell us on this, we don't have to waste time. We can read messages, we can converse and talk to them, and maybe we find a connection that can actually scale us and get us past our barriers.
For the startups that are on StartupFuel, what is the level or the stage that they need to be on? Do they need to be an ideation stage in conception of, a product market fit, or do they have to have validation? What's the best stage for them to be at before they can actually take full advantage of what StartupFuel has to offer?
So the long answer is the fact that we want to be able to cover everything from ideation to IPO. That's the game. Okay. Right? We want to make sure we have resources for everything, but you don't start off doing everything. It never make sense. So while you can still register, our target right now are pre-seed and seed companies. So not the direct ideation, like I'm just starting a company from day one, but we've started it, we have a deck, we maybe have some initial friends, family, and founders investment, and now we're looking to go for angels, investors, find competitions to apply to, and find VC funds to go after. That's the cycle that we've mapped, and we've understood the framework around it, and we're starting to target those people. That's not to say that in the future that we are not focusing on the upper ranges. Like, we've got corporate innovation players coming into play, Verizon, Motorola, Allstate, GM, Lego, like some people that we've been speaking with that are now helping the Series A companies run pilot projects, run acquisition panels, corporate venture, right? It's still new, but to today, this point on December 2nd, 2020, our focus is around helping pre-seed and seed startup companies in North America access resources locally and globally.
And that's really powerful because it leads up to the fact that when you have an idea, you can still join a community like this to keep growing or getting new ideas for innovation and growth, but also those companies that you're targeting are in the most need, right? They're in the most need right now that you can have the biggest impact for them to continue to grow. But it's cool that you're doing amazing work with the larger global brands to be able to do those projects in beta or in alpha testing. So for all of our listeners today, Ash, what's the best place for people to thank you for this episode, is also reach out to you and learn more about StartupFuel?
So StartupFuel.com is a place to go. If you're part of the ecosystem, go and register your company right there. It's free to register, and it'll take you less than 5 minutes to do. Once you're up there, as soon as opportunities get listed that match who you are, you'll get notified. So you can come, you can still follow other companies, build up your presence on there, find programs, meet with people, which is getting bigger and bigger now. We're past 1,775 companies in, I think, 480 to 500 cities around the world. So the reach is, exponentially growing, and it's fantastic. But if you want to personally reach out to me, ash@startupfuel.com, email me anytime, whether you want to talk, how do I fundraise, how do I get, how do I set up a company, where do I find developers, or if you're an investor, how do we better make our thesis better? How do we exit our portfolio to corporate companies or other funds? How do I run intake for accelerator programs or innovation? All of that stuff, anything startup related, I'm the guy, and our team will be the company that consistently works to build technology for this ecosystem.
No, I love that. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well, Ash. Well, thank you so much for being on, man.
Yeah, no worries. And one last thing I want to say, Simon Sinek has this great segment on YouTube about what, why, and how. Like, what is the identity of your company? And he talks about Apple and how they generated this. For us, our why behind everything that we do is, I have a strong belief that entrepreneurship is the way of freedom for the future. People who are getting maybe tied into something that they don't like but have an idea to disrupt, I really want to empower them, because not only does it help them, but it also helps the rest of humanity hear their voice and their ideas and make it real. So being able to help the startup ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem function better in the hopes that we can improve humanity as a whole, right? Cancer research, space exploration, being able to bring, finance and payments to smaller villages and communities around the world. All of this is possible with this global network, and that's the why. The what here is, we're using data, networks, connections, and technologies to revolutionize the interactions in the startup ecosystem. And what we're doing specifically, it doesn't matter, because we're going to keep building up different things from a platform perspective to get more people funded, get more companies growing, and just make this environment more sustainable. I think we've lost track of sustainability in innovation, and we're trying to bring that back a little bit.
You're doing some important work, man, and I'm honored to have you here on the podcast to share that.
Yeah, thank you so much, and you've been great as well.